The Haunting of Blackwood Manor. It was a cool autumn evening when three friends, Max, Sarah, and Emily, decided to explore the infamous Blackwood Manor. The old, decaying mansion had stood abandoned on the outskirts of town for decades, shrouded in mystery and rumors of haunting. Local legends spoke of the tragic demise of the Blackwood family and the restless spirits that now roamed its halls. With a mixture of excitement and trepidation, the friends set off, armed with flashlights and a sense of adventure. As they approached the manor, the sight was both awe-inspiring and ominous. The mansion loomed over them, its windows dark and foreboding, the once grand facade now covered in ivy and grime. The iron gates, rusted and creaking, swung open with an eerie groan. Max led the way, pushing through the overgrown path that led to the front door. "This place is seriously creepy," Emily whispered, her breath visible in the chilly air. "That's why we're here," Max replied with a grin, trying to mask his own nervousness. "Think of the stories we can tell after this." Sarah, the skeptic of the group, rolled her eyes but followed closely. "Let's just get this over with. I want to be back home before midnight." The front door, surprisingly unlocked, opened with a loud creak. The interior was cloaked in darkness, the air thick with dust and the scent of decay. They stepped inside, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. The grand foyer, once magnificent, was now a shadow of its former self, with cobwebs hanging from the chandelier and furniture covered in white sheets. "Let's split up and explore," Max suggested, his voice echoing in the vast, empty space. "We'll cover more ground that way." Reluctantly, the others agreed. Sarah headed toward the grand staircase. Emily ventured into the dining room, and Max made his way down a long, dimly lit corridor. Sarah climbed the creaking staircase, each step sounding like a protest. She reached the second floor and wandered through a series of bedrooms, all eerily preserved in their decay. As she entered the master bedroom, she felt a sudden chill. Her flashlight flickered, and she heard a faint whisper. "Hello?" she called out, her voice trembling slightly. There was no response, only the whispering growing louder. She shone her flashlight around the room, and her eyes widened as she saw a figure standing by the window. It was a woman, dressed in a tattered gown, her eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. Sarah froze in place, unable to move or speak. The ghostly figure turned to face her, and Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of despair wash over her. The apparition slowly vanished, leaving Sarah shaken and breathless. She stumbled out of the room, desperate to find her friends. Meanwhile, Emily was exploring the dining room, fascinated by the remnants of opulence. She found an old, dusty photo album on a sideboard and began flipping through it. The photographs depicted the Blackwood family in happier times, but as she turned the pages, the images grew darker, showing scenes of anger and violence. A loud bang from the kitchen startled her. She set the album down and cautiously made her way to the source of the noise. The kitchen was a mess, with broken dishes and overturned furniture. Suddenly, the room grew cold, and objects began to move on their own. Pots and pans clattered to the floor, and the table slid across the room, blocking the exit. Panicking, Emily tried to push the table out of the way, but it wouldn't budge. The temperature continued to drop, and she could see her breath. She heard footsteps approaching, and when she turned, she saw a shadowy figure with glowing eyes advancing toward her. Terrified, she screamed for help. Max wandered down the long corridor, feeling a growing sense of unease. The walls were lined with portraits of stern-faced Blackwood ancestors, their eyes seeming to follow him as he walked. He reached the end of the corridor and found a door slightly ajar. Pushing it open, he discovered a library filled with ancient books and dusty tomes. As he explored the room, he noticed a large, leather-bound book lying open on a desk. Curiosity getting the better of him, he approached the book and began to read. It contained a detailed account of the Blackwood family's history, including their descent into madness and the tragic events that led to their deaths. Suddenly, the door slammed shut, and the room grew dark. Max felt a presence behind him and turned to see a spectral figure materializing. It was a man, his face twisted in rage and torment. The ghost lunged at Max, who stumbled backward, knocking over a bookshelf. Books and papers flew through the air as the spirit continued its assault. Desperate to escape, Max managed to pry the door open and ran down the corridor, shouting for Sarah and Emily. The three friends converged in the foyer, their faces pale and filled with fear. "We need to get out of here," Sarah said urgently, her voice shaking. "This place is haunted." "No kidding," Emily replied, glancing nervously around. "Let's go now." As they made their way to the front door, it suddenly slammed shut, sealing them inside. The air grew heavy with an oppressive energy, and the temperature plummeted. The whispering began again, louder and more insistent, filling the room with disembodied voices. Desperate, Max tried the door again, but it wouldn't budge. "We're trapped," he said, panic rising in his voice. "There's got to be another way out," Emily insisted. "Maybe a window or a back door." They hurried through the mansion, searching for an escape route. The whispering followed them, growing louder with each step. Shadows moved along the walls and objects flew across rooms, driven by an unseen force. It was as if the spirits of the Blackwood Manor were determined to keep them there. In their frantic search, they found a door leading to the basement. "Maybe there's an exit down here," Sarah suggested, though her voice wavered with fear. They descended the narrow staircase, the air growing colder and more oppressive. The basement was dark and dank, filled with old furniture and forgotten relics. As they reached the bottom, they saw a faint light coming from a room at the far end. Cautiously, they approached the light. The room was filled with old, rusted tools and a large, ornate mirror that seemed out of place. The light was coming from the mirror, which shimmered with an otherworldly glow. "This is weird," Max said, staring at the mirror. "Do you think it's some kind of portal?" "Only one way to find out," Sarah replied, her curiosity overcoming her fear. She reached out and touched the mirror's surface. It rippled like water, and her hand disappeared into it. "Whoa," Emily breathed, her eyes wide. "Should we go through?" "We don't have much choice," Max said. "It's either this, or stay trapped here with the ghosts." Taking a deep breath, the three friends stepped through the mirror, feeling a strange sensation as they were pulled into the other side. They emerged in a dimly lit room that looked identical to the basement they had just left, but something felt different. The air was heavy with a sense of foreboding, and the whispering had stopped. Instead, they heard a low, guttural growl. "Where are we?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Max replied, looking around. "But we need to find a way out of here." As they moved through the basement, they realized it was a twisted reflection of the manor, with warped walls and distorted furniture. They encountered more ghostly figures, each more terrifying than the last. These spirits were not just restless, they were vengeful, attacking the friends with a ferocity that left them battered and bruised. In their desperate search for an exit, they stumbled upon a hidden chamber. Inside, they found a large, ancient book on a pedestal, surrounded by candles. The book seemed to pulse with a dark energy, and the room vibrated with a low hum. "This has to be the source of the haunting," Sarah said, approaching the book. "Maybe if we destroy it, we can break the curse." "Or we could unleash something even worse," Emily warned, but she knew they had no other choice. Max grabbed the book and opened it, revealing pages filled with strange symbols and incantations. As he read aloud, the room shook, and the spirits converged on them, their faces twisted with rage. "Keep reading," Sarah shouted, trying to fend off the apparitions. Max's voice grew stronger as he recited the incantations, the air crackling with energy. The spirits howled in fury, their forms flickering and fading. The book began to glow, and with a final, blinding flash, the spirits were gone. The mirror reappeared, shimmering with a welcoming light. Exhausted and shaken, the friends stepped through, emerging back into the basement of the real Blackwood Manor. The oppressive atmosphere was gone, replaced by an eerie calm. They made their way upstairs and found the front door unlocked. As they stepped outside, the first light of dawn was breaking over the horizon. They hurried away from the manor, never looking back. The friends vowed never to speak of their ordeal again, but they couldn't shake the feeling that they had left something behind in